Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris Mcintire. Mcintire Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning, helping to uncomplicate the financial world. He is president and founder of Mcintire Retirement Services. Chris Mcintire once again with us. And Chris, today going to get back to some of the basics of how to set up and establish a true plan for retirement confidence.
Yep, Peter, it, like you say, when it gives you more confidence, knowing that you've got something in a plan in place rather than what we call the hope and pray portfolio. You know, I'm hoping and praying everything works out fine, but I really don't know if it will. So for some of you out there, we're venturing into the unknown. If you don't do this for a living, it can certainly seem overwhelming. And I think we have a good methodology of breaking it down and going piece by piece and nice and slow. You know, my mom was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, and I think some of that has fallen into my hands. So we help kind of teach or coach, if you will, clients along the way.
Well, Chris, we have seen studies that show only 31% of non-retired investors believe that they'll have enough money to retire, while 50% of investors with a written plan feel confident in their retirement planning. So while 50% is not an overwhelming majority by any stretch, it is a big difference that simply having a plan makes in that confidence level that we have when we're looking at our financial future.
Right, Peter. And, you know, if you think about it, I hear the word should a lot in our world. You know, I should have done this years ago. I should have done that. And, you know, you got to be real careful, kind of self-shaming yourself. And look, it is what it is. Let's deal with the facts that are in place, get rid of all of those shoulds and put in place, you know, woulds. And, you know, look, this is what I've done, and I knew it would help my financial future. So transfer from the should to the would, if you will.
Well, if we can get that plan in place, it makes such a big difference, and we know what would or what will happen into the future. And Chris Mcintire can help you structure that plan, design that plan, implement that plan, monitor that plan on an ongoing basis. But really, the confidence, the quality of life that it results in, that is derived from having that plan. So if you would like to get your game plan for retirement put together, a snapshot of where you are currently, an analysis of current holdings, a discussion of your goals, writing those down, documenting those, comparing those to alternatives that are out there as far as what you currently own in your accounts with your assets, your investments, your retirement plan put together with a detailed list of action items that you can take in order to achieve those goals. Pick up the phone, give a call. Chris Mcintire, happy to hear from you. Talk it over, answer a few questions over the phone, and then get together either in person or through that ease and convenience of technology through the virtual meetings. You can do that as well. All you need to do to get started is pick up the phone and give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, as we are working our way through our career and earning the paycheck, what are the beginning steps of trying to make that transition and really planning for the next phase of our financial progress?
Well, yeah, let's start with step number one. And, you know, it would be knowing the basics. You know, what are your basic living expenses? You know, which means what does it cost to get through a month of your life, for example, and not including big vacations, but start with the basics. Okay. And then you want to determine what is the time horizon. How long are those expenses going to be that way? For an example, let's say you're going to retire and you're going to have a mortgage payment 4 or 5 years into your retirement. And then all of a sudden, hey, a $700 a month payment goes away. Well, that's a significant change. And you want to know how those things are going to, you know, how they impact your monthly expenses, because then you can offset those monthly expenses by pension income, if you have one, Social Security income, and then start determining what is my shortfall between what comes in and what goes out. And then we'll transition into the, how do we structure the portfolio to solve for that shortfall, if you will, Peter.
So a lot of math kind of going in there, but trying to figure out what that living costs us. That's kind of the first essential component of planning for retirement. In order to know what we need to have and what retirement's going to look like, we got to examine what our lifestyle cost us.
Certainly. Yeah, exactly. And, if you're going to spend, 3 months in Florida, for example, is that going to be an extra $10,000 a year for the first 15 years of your retirement? Those are some pretty significant numbers that you have to know going into the retirement aspect, because most folks are going to spend more money early in retirement versus late, unless they go into a nursing home and they have to write a big check to a nursing home. But obviously, if you're, younger, more active, you want to do some of the traveling that you haven't been able to do, that's going to happen early in your retirement. And then being able to budget for that and understanding how much of my portfolio or my life savings am I going to have to draw off of? So, we've done this many times on the show, Peter. So let's say you're $4,000 a month short on what's coming in versus what's going out between expenses and Social Security, for example. And you still need $4,000 more a month. That's $50,000 a year. If you have $1 million portfolio, to use easy math, you've got to draw off 5% of that portfolio. And I would think that right now inflation is on the front burners of everybody's mindset for right now. And hey, if costs are continuing to skyrocket right now, that 5% may need to be 7% in a year just to sustain the same standard of living. And, that poses some potential threats to, making that nest egg last, Peter.
Chris, do you find that the average saver, investor, worker earning a paycheck really knows what their average monthly or what their monthly expenses are? Are we paying enough attention to that? And then when you're talking about a factor like inflation, which sort of can lay dormant for a while and then all of a sudden pop up and be a big issue, how do we factor that in? I imagine we have to sort of overestimate on the inflation side and the expense side, and then as much as we feel comfortable, underestimate on the amount that we feel our portfolio and other sources can generate for us.
Yeah, kind of the plan for the worst and, hope for the best type of scenario there is a good cliche, Peter. And like you say, always overestimate the expenses, because nobody knows what, the cost of gasoline, for example, is going to be 5 years from now. So you have to give some sort of an estimate. And, typically we use a 3% inflation rate. Looks like we're going to get that's going to be a significant difference this year in 2021 than what it was in 2020, as an example. And inflation is certainly a threat as we're going forward. And here's an example. If inflation gets to 6%, then in 12 years, you need twice as much income just to live the same standard of living and buy the same goods and services. So think about that. Okay. If inflation is running at 6%, in 12 years, you need to double your income. How are you going to do that?
Well, again, if you need help in crunching these numbers, that's what the game plan for retirement is all about. Working these scenarios through, hoping for the best, but having that plan in place to prepare you in case things happen, prepared for the worst case scenario. And then you can go and live with more confidence after you've got that plan in place and thought those scenarios through and put them in writing, and you are better prepared as a result. If you would like to get that game plan for retirement, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194 to speak with Chris Mcintire, Northwestern Ohio's planning resource, president, founder at Mcintire Retirement Services. He will put that game plan for retirement together for you. No cost, no obligation. Similar plans can easily go upwards of $1,000 to several thousands of dollars, but Chris makes that available to you just for being a listener to this program or a viewer of the podcast. No cost, no obligation. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, as you are talking with savers and investors about their future, about what retirement looks like, how How precise are people about those future goals? Do you find that a lot of people just speak about it in generalities, or do you find that a lot of people actually have very specific desires and wishes for what they want that retirement to look like?
Yeah, Peter, I would say in general, most people have a ballpark, if you will. If I deal with somebody that's really good at running spreadsheets and whatnot, then they typically, have a better feel for it. So it kind of depends if you are a numbers person or a non-numbers person, if you will, your math skills there. But by and large, most people kind of ballpark, what they've got coming in. And if you think about it, hey, if you're in your late 50s, and if the kids are gone already and a husband and a wife are both working, there's probably a lot more discretionary income. So they're not necessarily been worrying about the precise number, what it takes for them to live on a month, because they got more money coming in, the savings is growing. As they work their way into transition into retirement, it's, do we pay the house off early? Do we lease cars or do we buy them? If we're going to rent a place in Florida, is that better than buying a place in Florida, for example? So a whole different, number issues around numbers, let me say it that way, comes up as they transition into retirement that they have never really faced before. And, again, not to stereotype everybody, but all of a sudden it seems like retirement is here and we have to make a decision in the next 30 days because some people, a confused mind always says no or does nothing about it.
But then we have to actually run those numbers and kind of extrapolate out what that retirement picture looks like, Chris. And I know you've talked about this concept of setting your baseline of income and knowing that a certain portion of your portfolio is going to be able to generate a specific amount of income for us. But that's where the balance really of income and then growth for investment, or investment for growth rather, comes into play. This is a different type of diversification because now we have to diversify for the specific purpose of replacing that paycheck with at least a portion of our portfolio.
Yeah, and you have to understand what type of risk you are taking transitioning into retirement into the decumulation phase from the accumulation phase, where serious stock market declines are going to have a bigger impact when you're taking money out of it, because you've been in the paradigm or the way of thinking of, well, when the market goes down, I'm putting more money into the stock market and I'm buying more shares at depressed prices. Well, you're now in a phase of life where you're doing the exact opposite. You're exacerbating the losses because the market fell and I took money out of it. So we call that sequence risk, if you will, the sequence of returns of the stock market. And, Peter, you and I have talked many times on, if you retired in 1996 versus 1999, the impact that would have on a portfolio, because in 1996 we had 3 great years of the stock market, 4 if you include 1996 itself. And then we had the tech bubble. If you would have retired in 1999, your next 3 years of your retirement were basically, the S&P 500 losing 12, 22, and 9% right out of the gate. I mean, that's almost devastating. So you have to incorporate other strategies in case the stock market doesn't do what you want it to do. And it doesn't.
And so that, Chris, is where the plan actually will help to identify and help us to understand the various risks that we may be exposed to in retirement. Again, through that planning process, that's where we get that knowledge. And then we can have those discussions of how and with what strategies do we want to address those various risks.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Peter. And, cost of living adjustments are something that's going to be, or the increasing income is certainly the conversations that we've been having and we will continue to have that to combat that pace of inflation. And it's going to be interesting here as to what the cost of living adjustment for Social Security is going to be in 2022. I just saw a report on, I think it was Fox Business News yesterday, where it may be 5.5%, 6% increase in your Social Security payments. That's a significant impact there, to give people more dollars too. But again, I'm not getting a raise. I'm just being able to buy the same goods and services. That's
right.
it.
Yeah, and I know they talked about this year may be larger than in recent previous years, but Chris, not intended to cover 100% of all of the expenses in retirement regardless. There was a recent article from Dave Ramsey that said about 44% of Americans planned on Social Security being their main source of retirement income. And I've read other stats that said about 40% of Americans, it's their only source of retirement income, but it's not meant to give us the same lifestyle that we had during our working career. Essentially, it is just a component of what is meant to be a full, robust retirement plan, along with personal savings. And now today, Chris, our personal savings also has to count for another often missing piece, which is the pension that we once had and could rely on.
No question about it, Peter. And yeah, like you say, Social Security was designed to replace the income of lower wage earners, not upper wage earners. And the way they calculate the formula for Social Security benefits clearly dictates that. And so, you know, the larger your lifestyle is going to be in your retirement, the more dollars you're going to need to save. And, you know, to recap some of the risks that you're going to be facing, Peter, the one we just talked about, sequence of returns, you know, pulling money out of a 401k that's invested in the market, for example. Bad things can happen, you know, and bad things can happen, or maybe not bad things, we should say, but, you know, lower than expected returns, let's say it that way, you know, over a longer period of time. Can certainly happen in inflationary cycles. You know, the inflation risk as well. You know, something happens to you or your spouse, so you lose a loved one earlier in retirement than what anybody had expected. And now you're down a Social Security benefit for married couples because you only get one. You don't get a combination of the two. You get the highest amount basically of either of the wage earners. And then you have, you know, duration risk in the bond market, right? If they start raising interest rates, what happens to the value of bonds as people retire? They get more conservative. So, you know, highlighting a number of these different risk factors, and we can eliminate them, but we can mitigate them.
Well, again, that's having that plan together where you first identify them and then you can mitigate them. Again, not eliminate them, but address them through proper planning so that you are aware of them. And then you take the appropriate steps to optimize your plan to help you address those potential risks into the future. That is what the game plan for retirement is all about: a snapshot of where you are currently, a discussion of your goals, identifying those risks, and then the action items, a timeline of executable steps that you can take in order to achieve your financial goals and to address many of retirement's biggest risks. If you would like to get that game plan for retirement, pick up the phone, give Chris Mcintire and Mcintire Retirement Services a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And then, Chris, it's like the old carpentry saying or construction, you measure twice and cut once. I know that you are helping to review these plans often, frequently, and on an ongoing basis with your clients.
Certainly, as we go through different phases of life and different phases of retirement, things change. A basic example there is somebody retires in their early 60s. They're focused more on themselves. As they transition into their early and maybe mid to late 80s, then a lot of times the focus is on how do I set my estate to best pass assets on, or do I start giving money away, that type of thing. And you know, so you need to update your estate plan as well, you know, with a qualified attorney. That might be, you know, a basic will, updating beneficiary documents to avoid the probate process, keeping your powers of attorney, your living wills, those things updated. And, you know, some of you will want a trust in place to help grandkids, or, you know, even your own kids that might have spending problems, or, you know, you just want someone else to administer it. So my wife and I, we have a trust in place for our assets. And, you know, if something happens to us, we actually have a trust company that will administer it, because, you know, we don't want to burden any of our loved ones with all of that responsibility. And, you know, my wife and I have done that for several other folks and friends. And it is a job to administer somebody else's estate if they're not, well enough, they got cognitive issues and you still need to pay bills and run their finances and things like that, even if they're in a nursing home, that takes a lot of time and effort on someone's behalf.
Often things that unfortunately are left undone or maybe not all the way thought through as far as what can and will happen into the future. But that's again why you need to have a plan and have a conversation with a qualified professional who has seen this through many times. Chris, we hope to retire once and we hope to do it the right way. But you talked earlier about the difference between a hope and a plan. And I think that a lot of people want to have that retirement and don't want to burden their family or their loved ones. That's where we really need to understand the difference between a plan and a projection. We won't even call it just sheer hope, because a lot of people do have something, they have the tools, and they may even have some projections of what the future could look like. But that also is separate and different than the type of plan that we talk about here on Your Game Plan for Retirement.
It certainly is, Peter. I've got a couple of different software programs that we use for helping people determine when the best time for them to take Social Security is. We also have another software program where we can plug in all of the retirement numbers, the income numbers, the expenses, add in some what ifs and look at things in a real life scenario in real time and show that to people. Look, this is what happens if the missus passes away at age 68 instead of age 88, the impact that has. And then what are some of the best strategies to help mitigate or to protect you against that, the transfer of risk, if you will? Is it a term life insurance policy? Do we look at an annuity with a cost of living adjustment or an increasing income potential to help offset some of the other factors? Have a safe money strategy in place. And many of these things change as people go through their retirement. We've had a very good run in the stock market. So many more folks have been very optimistic, probably overweighted in equities right now than they normally would be if they could go into a bank and get 4 or 5% on a certificate of deposit. They can't do that. So essentially that money is probably in the stock market right now where it would normally be in a safer position. And as interest rates change in the future here and increase, that may become more attractive. And then we may see an outflow of assets from stocks into other safer places. And that will again affect the equity prices, right? If people start selling, that pushes prices down. It does not push prices up.
Yeah, Chris, important point that you mentioned there. I mean, we've had a fantastic run in the market. The last 10 years has been a historic bull market. But do we expect the next 10 years to continue that run? Do we realistically expect this thing to just continue upward traction like it has? Or do we expect the next 10 years potentially to look more like the 10 years prior between 2000 and 2010 to 2012-ish, where the market moved about 12 years and it essentially was flat? I mean, there were two big 50% drops during that time and two big recoveries, but from the year 2000 to about the year 2012, it kind of was just a sideways movement. And then we've seen this historic run. Do we expect the next 10 years to look like one or others or a mix of the two? We have no idea, but that's where a plan comes into place. And then you also mentioned that because we have seen this historic rise in the stock market and all of this appreciation in the equities, that people are actually overexposed to risk as a result. If we have seen that side of our portfolio have that kind of astronomical growth, that means that more of our money is exposed to the risk of the market. I think this is an important factor that people should not be missing and overlooking, and really need to review on a regular basis to make sure that their mix, their investments do stay appropriately balanced for their risk comfort level.
Yeah, no question about it. And, today's world of 30-second news bites and, Kramer said this on CNBC today, should we be doing that, is trying to tone down all of the noise that comes in, if you will. There's so much information out there. And, a lot of times we tell folks, look, stop looking at the TV every day. You build a portfolio around your overall risk tolerance. You separate off, maybe you create an income stream with a portion of your assets to help you cover those basic living expenses. You have some dollars for longer term growth. You have some dollars for that, that mid-range, kind of give you some comfort level, but having a safe money strategy certainly is going to help you weather some of the storms emotionally, right? Because like Peter said, from 2000 to basically 2010, hey, we had one heck of a recession in there in the 2000 to 2002 tech bubble. And then we had the 2008 financial crisis. So, we've had some unbelievable runs in the market, followed by some unbelievable, dips in the stock market. And you have to have a couple of different options for yourself, because why would you want to go into retirement with one strategy? I'm hoping and praying that the market holds up. Well, what if it doesn't? Then that blows a hope and a prayer portfolio out of the water, when you could say, well, thank God I got a plan B in here, because plan A didn't work the first 5 years. And we've got plan B here that I can switch over to, let plan A give it time to do what it needs to do over the long haul.
And once again, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. The plan is what prepares us in other situations, in the bad weather, in the storms, through the risks. The plan is what will carry us through. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, it's so important that as you are making progress toward retirement, certainly within the window of retirement, about 5 to 10 years out and 5 to 10 years into retirement, that you are reviewing that plan on a regular basis and throughout our lifetime. As we move on and the world around us changes and our life situation changes, we need to be reviewing that plan on an ongoing and regular basis with a qualified professional as well. And Chris Mcintire is here to help and assist to review your current situation, give you a snapshot of where you are, to discuss your goals, and to help you design and implement a plan, and then monitor it with you on an ongoing basis. If you would like that help and assistance, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And Chris, through that plan review, through designing that plan, oftentimes you are able to identify strategies. You've seen many different situations. You know the tools. You know the structure of assets. You're able to identify ways where we can maybe achieve our goals a little bit more quickly, a little bit more securely, where we could leverage our dollars, and potentially where we can address and reduce or eliminate risks.
Certainly. And, we have to manage the tax situation in there as well. That's just as important as, all of the other factors that come into play here as well. And, someone's got to be a quarterback for you and kind of drive this, steer this ship, if you will, be a captain, I guess, is it probably a good reference as we're sitting here at the lake.
Well, again, if you need help, if you need assistance, give Chris Mcintire a call. He's happy to hear from you, provide that guidance in any way he can, and help you formulate that plan. 800-868-1194, the number to call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. A written plan has many, many benefits, the highest being the confidence in the quality of life that it can instill while building toward and living through retirement. The plan won't stay the same forever. It will change and evolve as time goes on. And that's why having that relationship with a qualified planner advisor can be so impactful, can make such a difference. And Dave Ramsey, again, going back to his article, Chris, recently cited 6 things to do to prepare for retirement. Number 6 on that list, kind of the conclusion of the article: work with a qualified professional. Don't go it alone, because we've only done this one time. We don't have the experience to say, this is what has worked before, this is what hasn't worked. We don't want to make this something that we say, oh, well, it didn't work out that time, I guess I'll have to do it over. That's why working with an experienced, qualified professional such as yourself and having that plan in place is just one of the basic essentials of having confidence and quality of life in retirement.
Yeah, we've helped people steer clear of some storms in the past, and that certainly can help, remove some of the emotion that a lot of people make their decisions based on, and that's not always the best way to do it by any means.
Well, if you would like that discussion with a qualified professional. If you would like that game plan for retirement designed for your situation, pick up the phone, give Chris Mcintire a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. If you're listening or viewing the podcast, be sure to hit the like, the subscribe, the share button. If you have found information on this podcast helpful, there's plenty of others in the archives on Chris Mcintire's website. Lots of additional resources there as well. McIntireRetirementServices.com, McIntireRetirementServices.com. Easiest way to get the conversation started or get answers to some financial and retirement related questions that have been on your mind is just give a call now. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, we always appreciate the time. It's a pleasure speaking with you, and we wish you the best as you are helping so many across Northwestern Ohio plan and prepare for their financial futures.
I appreciate it, Peter. Good to be with everybody. Have a nice weekend out there. Stay safe, folks. Thank you.
Visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris Mcintire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.